Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. We'll get started. Oh, thank you. So thank you so much for being here. I'd like to start by recognizing that we're on the shared unceded territories of the Squamish Nation and Lewat Nation. And I'm very honored to honor their language, culture, and heritage. My name's Mandy Russo. I'm with the Whistler Institute. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. The Whistler Institute is a registered charity founded in 2015 by a passionate group of volunteers looking to bring learning opportunities to our community. And today we have one part-time staff member, that is myself. In response to our community's ever-changing needs and areas of interest, we regularly facilitate learning needs assessments and community outreach to understand what topics people are interested in and what needs we can fill. In everything we do, our lens for all of our actions is to be inspiring, impactful, and inclusive. The Global Perspective Speaker Series is our main program at the moment, designed to stimulate discussion and inspire action around the world's greatest challenges. Topics are selected based on a blend of community input and current conversations happening around the world that may or may not be taking place here in Whistler. This evening is one of our partner events where we have been fortunate enough to collaborate with Cornucopia. And as a small but mighty nonprofit in our growth phase, partnerships like this one are essential to reaching new faces. So thank you for those of you who have not engaged with us before. I cannot stress enough how much our donors, sponsors, ticket and series pass holders mean to us. Being here wouldn't be possible without the support of our dedicated partners and attendees. This evening in particular has been supported, as I said, with Cornucopia, Vail Resorts Epic Promise, and Nita Lake Lodge, which I'll get to in a moment. In terms of housekeeping, so you all experience that there's two ways in and out of this building. And when the evening ends, the exit is the one with the hallway that most of you didn't know. We're going to direct you that way. There's a bathroom towards that exit as well. Follow the exit signs out to the right. The audio for this evening will be recorded as we will be posting it online afterwards. And following Jeff and Decoa's talk, there will be a Q&A. After the Q&A, Jeff and Decoa have been very generous in getting some wine samples for everybody here this evening. So there will be wine samples available afterwards. There will also be sandwiches for those who are joining the cellar door after. So I will be in charge of handing out sandwiches to those of you who have that combo ticket. And if you don't have the combo ticket, you just get wine, no sandwich. So, thank you, Decoa. It's, oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. Oh, no. Oh, I shouldn't press buttons. So I'll stop now and I will introduce our speakers this evening. Decoa and Jeff Harder successfully created and built Ex Nihilo Winery in the Okanagan Valley, an endeavor that lasted 20 years. During that time, they farmed up to 100 acres annually, including vineyards located as far north as Vernon and south to Oliver, BC. Other entrepreneurial endeavors included producing both US and Canadian wine for rock legends the Rolling Stones and distributing it internationally. The couple now own and operate Groupe One Consulting, offering business operations and marketing engagement services to the wine industry. So thank you so much for being here. And now, Jeff and Decoa.
Thank you, Mandy.
Good to have you.
And we are just going to start off with a little video to warm you up.
And we'll come back and do a more formal introduction to where we came from. So enjoy this video first, please.
My name is Eckhard Zeidler. I'm at Cliff and Gorge Vineyards in Lillooet. I'm president of the company. I'm the chief bottle washer. I'm the guy that works in the vineyard.
It's my
In the French, we call that a vigneron, the guy that does everything. I was living in Europe and with a completely different career. My eldest son, who was in diapers and eating grapes, saw this old man down in the vineyard just tending to his grapes. And I said to myself, that's what I want to be doing when I'm that age. It's been a long journey to get here, but I've made it.
My name is Harry Bian. I'm the general manager of Bench 1775 Winery on Narmat, the most beautiful place in the world. The best part of winemaking for me is when I bring some to my friends in my hometown. They feel so good, make me so proud of it.
My name is Decoa Harder. I'm proprietor and founder of Ex Nihilo Vineyards, Okanagan Valley. Ex Nihilo is a Latin name meaning out of nothing. Our saying is memor vivo, remember to live. And that's what visiting a winery is all about. Summertime in the vineyard is super cool because the fruit actually sets. We're seeing it grow. We know what sort of yields we're going to get.
Here in Lillooet, I mean, it's the hot spot of Canada. Above the vineyards, the peaks go up to 10,000 feet. Below the vineyards is the mighty Fraser River. I see that we have been given the great privilege of caretaking this really, really incredible piece of property.
Here we have long daytime and enough heat to make beautiful wine.
So the whole goal is to grow fruit, not the vine. So the vine has a purpose. It feeds the fruit. You want as much of that nutritional value to end up in the fruit as possible.
Working in a small winery, you should know everything from growing grapes to making wine.
It's super fun to be involved in the different pieces, from vineyard thinking to production thinking. The British Columbia wine industry is an amazing place to visit. What we produce and put in a glass is something that we can be proud of wherever we take it in the world.
Well, here we are, folks. How did you like that video? That's the Okanagan wine industry at its finest. And actually, before we go further, does that picture make me look skinnier or just a little bit maybe? Anyway, thought we'd start off with that. No, before we get started, I'm going to say some thank yous right off the bat. So I'd like to thank the Whistler Institute for having us come out and speak. It's been about 2 years since Decoa and I have been speaking to people like yourselves that we used to, when we owned the winery, we used to get out and do a lot of speaking, and we sold it a couple of years ago. So we haven't been doing so much. So in come our friends, good friends, Adam and Bindi from here in Whistler that had asked us to come out. Adam's been working with the Institute, and we thought he thought it would be a good thing for us to come out and speak in the industry about climate change. And so here we are, and we got to meet, of course, a lot of great people so far. Mandy, and I met Sue here earlier as part of the board. And of course, Russell, we're going to say thank you right off the bat for the video production. So I want to talk a little bit about from that video. Does anybody here like to own a winery? Hey? Yeah. Okay, a few of you lay down until the feeling goes away right now. We've been through some changes, and as much as we went through the video there a few years ago, smiling and talking about our passions in the industry, it's changed. And sadly, I think it was changing a number of years ago. And, you know, it's until we get behind the 8 ball when we recognize that, oh, hang on here, the industry is changing, and for a lot of reasons, not just climate change. There's things we're going to talk about a little bit later. So, so we're going to get into that. But I thought before we go too much further, let's tell you a little bit about us. Has anybody ever been to our winery called Ex Nihilo? Wonderful. Thank you. And it was built around romance. And Rico Suave, guy like me, started dating a young lady who thought he'd take her down to Napa Valley to visit my brother and his wife that were in the industry down in Napa. And being the romantic guy I am, I thought I'd take this young lady into an art gallery in San Francisco, where we came across this beautiful working sculpture called Ex Nihilo. And it captured me. And I liked what it meant, the term, a Latin term meaning out of nothing. And I stood there for about a half an hour just looking at this beautiful piece of artwork. And this young lady I was dating was going around the rest of the gallery and came back and said, time for lunch, let's go. And as I turned and walked away, I said, one day when we own a winery, we're going to call it Ex Nihilo. So 24 years later, I'm standing on the stage in Whistler talking about climate change and the different aspects of the industry that were getting hit. So anyway, this is not going to be any polished TED Talks. I'm sorry. We're going to do our best, but we want to have fun tonight too. And if you have a question, and there's no answers, believe me, right now there's some types of solutions, and there's things going on in the industry that the industry's trying not only here in British Columbia, but throughout the world. And the wine industry is kind of learning from each other. And we'll see some of that tonight. So I'm going to let Decoa come in now, because she's sometimes a little more polished than I am, and she can start telling you what we're going to dive into here. So
awesome.
Decoa.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for coming out tonight and taking part in this event, and Cornucopia and the Whistler Institute for hosting us this evening. So we're here to talk about climate change and how it's affecting vineyards around the globe, and also here in British Columbia. And it's been a lot of changes recently. So that photo of me walking through the vineyard, excited, smiling, checking out the grapes, that was done 2 years ago. So beautiful harvest was happening. We had great fruit set, and everything was looking glorious. And we're living our passion. And you now fast forward to 2024. Well, BC wine industry overall came with a 95% loss of crop. So, and that is after 2023, where they had a 50% loss, and 2022 with a 20% loss. So it's a cumulative effect of 3 years of poor winters because of extreme climate change and extreme climate events. So being a farmer in agriculture, it doesn't matter what you're in, the climate is always, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature, right? So we've always had extreme cold temperatures that could happen once every 10 years. Fires did happen in the past, but now they're happening more and more frequently. Heat domes that shut down vineyards and cause issues, whether it's your staff that are trying to do tours with guests, and you've got a heat dome and you're making sure everybody's staying indoors where it's climate controlled, to in the vineyard where there's drought, and the vines start shutting down. Late spring frosts, which we'll talk a lot about, because that is where some of the most severe bud damage happens. Flooding, hail, early fall freeze. So an early fall freeze that will shut down the ripening process in the vineyards. So you may have great fruit set, but once you get a freeze in the fall, then the grape ripening process stops. So you've got all this wonderful fruit, but it hasn't reached the optimal sugar levels. The acids are still too high, and you're going to have a hard time making excellent wine with it. And then drought. So just to start off here, we're just going to go around and look at what some regions in the world are doing. So this is in the Loire Valley of France, and they've been doing this for years, lighting little lanterns in the vineyard, trying to keep the plants warm during a cold snap. And you can see this couple out there checking their vines. It's a severe frost, and there's already been a bit of bud break. So they are concerned of what damage is done. So the same vineyard from an aerial view, it gives you an idea of the scope of what it looks like. So all the lanterns throughout the vineyard. So if you can imagine the amount of work that it takes to set the lanterns out, to light the lanterns, to monitor them. So a lot of costs are going in to mitigate the temperatures and make sure that the vines are staying alive and that they will have a harvest in the year to come. This is in Italy, and this is just over a year ago, May of 2023. So a massive flooding took place where the plants were under a meter of water for 3 days straight. So that causes asphyxiation of the plant and leads to the death of the plant. So total destruction. Hillsides were hit with mudslides, landslides were wiped out. So having rains in vineyards and torrential downpour, that happens, but this is excessive and causing long-term damage throughout the vineyards in different areas in Italy.
And that's been going on in Napa Valley too. Napa was getting hit a few years back with some heavy rains as well. This happens to be our place.
What was our place?
Yeah, and this is a great picture here at the bottom to see what a flash flood looks like in the Okanagan. Who would have thought? It picked up pallets, and actually the neighboring vineyard, which is Arrowleaf, probably got about 1.5 acres of topsoil from our vineyard. And Joe wasn't very happy about that in the beginning, but Decoa reassured him that was some of the best soils we had. But it kind of came down. The far left picture was our Riesling block.
Our right.
Left, right. And we had just planted that. So we had lost quite a few vines that we had to go back and replace. But even if that, and part of the issue there was a microburst. They said once in 100 years. Well, that was the first one we had. We've had several microbursts around our area since, and we've always had a big cleanup after. There's cost. That was our driveway for the people to come into our winery. So you can see that obviously they weren't driving in that day. That crater there was just caused by water running down that hill you see in the background. So
this is down in the United States, Virginia. And you might say, Virginia, I didn't know there's any wine in Virginia. But even though it is a very small industry, like BC, when you compare it on a global scale, it's still very relevant and very important to that state. Just like the BC grape growing region, when you travel around the world and you say from British Columbia and we make wine, they look at us sideways and they think we're maybe crazy, but because it is tiny and you don't see our wine showing up in shelves around the world. 90% of it does get consumed within the province. So similar, but it is important to that state. This is when you see the shoots that far out, they've already had significant growth. So this is May 10th of 2020. So a very, very late but severe frost. That is, when that happens to a vineyard in May and the shoots are that far out, you have zero chance of any fruit. So a complete wipeout. And then if you flip it to the opposite spectrum of a really hot summer and heat in 2024, so this past year, they were able to do all of their harvesting before September 1st. So that might be like, oh, great, you had a great hot year. But why would you, in a cool climate, one of the benefits of a cool climate growing region, what we talk about is our microclimates and where we have a leg up on maybe some of the hotter regions of Napa, is that we've always had in a cool climate a longer growing season. And that gives us time for the grapes to ripen slowly, for more complexities to be created in the fruit, and you end up with a richer, full-bodied, dynamic wine at the end of the day. But when it's cut short because it was really hot and rapid, so your fruit peaked, your sugars are already higher than you wanted them, the acid is falling, you need to harvest. So now it's a panic harvest to get the fruit off, to save it and still try to make the best wine possible. But it's not an ideal situation to have to harvest your fruit that early.
I'll speak to that a little bit more, just to kind of back what Decoa was saying. Years ago, I was very lucky to meet Robert Mondavi down in the US and get a quick picture with him. And where are you from? And I said, the Okanagan. And he had said, oh, you have the luxury there. And I kind of looked at him, and luxury of what? And he said, time. And he says, I like Napa Valley, what happens I like to kind of, I'll show the graph on my hand, but when you try these little berries that are coming out in August and early September, and you'll bite one, they're pea size and a lot of acid, and the sugars aren't there. So always acids are high, sugars are low. And as the seasons come together or moves along, those sugars start to come up and the acids start to drop. And the balance, you're looking for that perfect balance in the grape. And what happens sometimes in Napa, they get, my brother just came up not long ago, and it was 100 degrees only 2-3 weeks ago in Napa. So what happens is that the sugars take off and you get high alcohol wine, and the acids drop right out. So kind of leaving it flabby and disjointed. So as Robert said, here in the Okanagan, one of our luxuries is that, sugars and acids, and September comes along and they start to line up nicely. And because we know we're not going to get 100-degree heat spike, so to speak, we just hang out. What happens, and Jeff was famous for this at our winery, is leaving that fruit hang because we would, it's like grandma's stew. I would always say it's better in the longer you leave it, the better it kind of tastes. So the flavors, that juice is just intensifying and hanging out. We knew the acids weren't going to drop further, or the sugars, and then we'd pick it at the right amount, except the one time.
Well, and we have harvested as late as November 11th successfully. But yeah, if you're looking at what is going on in this vineyard, if you can see, the middle picture shows it best, but it's loaded with fruit. And so
it was Riesling. That was our Riesling in 2017. And Jeff says, let it hang. And so we did. And one morning I got up and I opened up our blinds, and I think I said a word that rhymes with truck. And Decoa looked at me and said, what did you say? And I said, oh boy, I think we got caught with our pants down. Hence, we called it the 2017 Pants Down Riesling. And you can see the fruit still hanging there. But that morning, it looked like that. And because of all the leaf on there, and a big windstorm and snow started knocking down vines, and that's what it looked like a day later after the snow melted, or 2 days later roughly. And so we had to stand up everything and pick the fruit. But again, just and maybe I pushed it a little bit, but we weren't hoping for a snowfall like that October 30th, but we did get one. Kind of minor in the grand scheme of things when we think of it, but
it did turn out to be great wine.
It was beautiful. So we a lot of gratitude for that. But anyway, but then all of a sudden, August 2023 and 2021 and 2017 and 2015, that was out the door that Decoa walked through in the video, and there's a fire across the way. Now, that's been going up and down the valley, as you know, and throughout everywhere. Lillooet, Lytton, unfortunately, and a lot of the world, our good friends in Australia have been fighting fires and the problems that arise out of that. We've, knock on wood, we've been lucky where haven't really lost vineyards, but we're dealing with that thing called smoke taint. And I'm sure that some of you have maybe tasted some wines where they taste a little more smoky than just out of the charred barrel, but it hasn't been too kind to us in the last few years. And there's the effects of that, not just the smoke taint. Guess what else happens? The tourists don't come because the media says, oh, Kelowna's on fire, or Soyuz and Oliver, we should stay home. We need our hotels for the displaced people out of their homes that are being evacuated. And it's all kind of true stuff. But the tourists stop coming, and rightfully so in a picture like this, but what happens is they don't come. And for the wineries that are open, 40 miles down the road, they're kind of fine, although they're blanketed in smoke from that fire, and vice versa. When there's a fire down there, it blows up our way and it lands in our vineyards. So we've had to deal with that. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, we closed for 9 days one year, and you got staff to look after, the bank to look after, and things like that. So again, it doesn't matter if it's the Okanagan or Virginia or Australia, France, Italy, Napa. All these areas we're farmers first and foremost, and we have these challenges. So here's our friends in Australia, and a lot of devastation going through their vineyards. So maybe we can go on. This is my brother's winery. It's very difficult for me to look at. He was lucky. That gentleman in the picture is his business partner, Jim Ragushi, third generation grape grower and winery owner. And he had never seen anything like it in his life. And he came to fight the fire at my brother's with his team. He has close to 800 employees, and a lot of mixed emotion. We were lucky. My brother's place was saved. Sadly, the homes just up the road were all taken out. It's my brother's home there. So, but they fought all night. And again, power was out for weeks. Just creates a lot of havoc. And again, we don't expect tourists to show up the next day and buy wines. So this climate change is real. And I was one of those ones where, a number of years ago, they started talking about it in the news, and we'd hear, hurricanes and earthquakes and whatever it is, we'd be hearing it, but that's somewhere else. It's not us. Now it's us, and it's still a lot of the rest of the world. So this just happened. And I talked to somebody 2 days ago, and their son is there working in these vineyards, and it was terrible. Cyclone went through there, and Decoa can talk a little more about New Zealand, but there are lots of problems over there right now in their industry.
Yeah, they've had a lot of challenges in New Zealand, but they've also have had some opportunities, and so in trying to mitigate it. So the cyclone was definitely a rare occurrence and did some total devastation. They have very little fruit set this year due to it, and so that's a huge change. But even in the last 10 years, what they're seeing is where most of the vineyards have been, is they're seeing more rainfall in the spring and fall. So that increases the risk of disease. It limits the fruit set during the early spring when you've got the blooms. If you have too much rainfall, more powdery mildew, that kind of thing. So that's been tricky. And then a lot of rain in the fall, again, limits the ripening they're getting. So on the other side of it, though, New Zealand has interesting topography, and they've been able to relocate some vineyards to different locations. So they've been looking at the microclimates and moving actually to higher elevations that are a bit drier, get a bit more airflow, and have had success doing that. Other things that they're trying to do is, because New Zealand, 80% of it's planted in Sauvignon Blanc, they've highly relied on one single varietal. They are looking at different clones of Sauvignon Blanc to try to diversify, but also looking at adding more different varietals to the region so that they can diversify, because it has been, it's a, for how small that population is of New Zealand, they produce a massive amount of wine. 80% of it, as noted there, it does get exported, but it's a huge economic driver for that country. So very, very important that they try to stay ahead of all the challenges that they're facing with climate change.
And if I can jump in again, Decoa said, and we went to a seminar in the summer, and the lady came up from New Zealand to speak on it, and it was great. And again, New Zealand has the luxury, kind of, and it might be the bigger players, the owners of the wineries and corporations that can relocate. Oh, let's just pick up and we're going to go over here now. Well, in the Okanagan, and as we're going to talk about, we have 12,681 acres. And you look around, there's not, where do we go? And yep, we're seeing Lillooet pop up in a beautiful valley. We drove through it today. I have relatives there and I love it every time. But they were hit as well. So again, just we're kind of dodging and weaving and serpentining through this climate change. So we don't, and in New Zealand, price per acre, I don't know what it is, but I know in some parts of the world where, an acre of grapes can sell for, equivalent to say 6,000 to 10,000 Canadian dollars. It's, still money. Here right now, we, last couple of years, we've, Okanagan vineyards are at 350, as high as 400,000 an acre. So even if we could pick up and move, we're buying, what we have to spend and get that going again. It sure doesn't pencil out. So
throughout BC, there are 9 different grape growing regions. Majority of them fall between Okanagan Valley and the Similkameen. Similkameen, if you're not familiar, that specifically is the Carameus Coston regions. So very basically adjacent to the Okanagan. So that makes up the vast majority of the total acreage. And then you have the smaller Vancouver Island, Gulf Islands, and then some pockets elsewhere in the interior, Kootenays, Thompson Valley, Lillooet, Shuswaps. But other than the Vancouver Island, Gulf Island, and Fraser Valley, which is the lower mainland, the rest of the 6 areas basically had the extreme cold snap and almost, it depends on exactly the winery, but many had 0 grape harvest and some had up to still 90% loss. So very devastating. One thing that we do have that's unique, that we do plant a variety of grapes. So 85 different varieties planted here. So, and we continue to look at new varieties that can withstand cold temperatures. So that's an opportunity for the future, and that you will probably see more variety of grapes.
I want to jump in and just say one thing. The Summerland Research Station, I heard this stat, and I'm sorry we didn't talk about it previous to this talk, but a couple of people told me that in the Okanagan, for example, we only have about 1,200 potential acres left to plant. And that's like ripping out apple orchard or some other type fruit to, or maybe finding the odd spot that we can plant down some grapes. But in the big grand scheme of things, 12, 13, 14,000 acres is not really that much at all compared to Italy and parts of California and that, where one winery can own that much vineyard. So it's pretty interesting how small that we actually are. And we're, collectively, we are blipping on the world stage, which is kind of nice on the radar there. So sorry to go on.
Oh, good. No, so just basically, we have the annual weather threats that basically we mentioned, but with climate change, they're becoming more dramatic and more often. So in the last 3 years, again, the crop loss has been going up dramatically. We're definitely, the wineries throughout BC are hoping that this year will be a mild winter, fingers and toes crossed, because they literally are, a lot of them are like, we don't know what we'll do if we have another cold winter. It's not sustainable for us to keep going. And notably that this last year in 2024, 95% crop loss, but also 20% vine loss. So when you lose a grapevine, you have to go and you wait till spring to replant it. You then have to wait 4 years to get a full harvest from that plant. So it's not just 1 year of loss, that then becomes a cumulative 4 years until you get that back. And it's out of pocket investment. So you're losing the revenue from that vineyard for 4 years and the cost of replanting.
And I'm going to jump in, and because you have to pull that plant out and order a new one for next season. Well, the nurseries, they're so backed up right now, you're not getting grapes maybe for 2 years. So now that turns into a 5 or 6 year kind of loss. So it's extreme. It sure is. So
one of the things that a lot of wineries now are doing is not what this person in that slide is doing. I included the slide for a reason, but you can tell he's doing pruning and there's still snow on the ground. So, and that was very common. It was kind of like, oh, who can get their pruning done the fastest this year? And it's always like, you're patting yourself on the back. Like, we're done, we're ahead of the game. Well, now they're saying, oh, no, let's just hold off. Let's make sure that we're out of the risk of frost and trying to push the pruning back as late as you can, so that if you do have that late frost, you're not caught and you've a better chance to survive it, to survive. So just to talk a bit more in depth on what happens when we have the cold snaps and why it is so detrimental. Most vinifera grapes, so those are your prime winemaking fruit that we traditionally were drawn to because they were the ones that we were told we should, enjoy. So the most popular varietals when you think of wine that come to mind, Cabernet and Riesling and Merlot.
Chard.
And so any of those traditional European vinifera grapes, once the temperature gets to minus 23 degrees Celsius, we start getting a risk of 50% bud damage. If the weather gets to a minus 30 degree dip, well, now we're at 99% damage. On the flip side of that, there are hybrid varietals that can withstand temperatures of minus 30 and lower, up to minus 35, including Frontenac Blanc, Frontenac Gris, Frontenac Noir, and Marquette. All of those 4 varieties are currently grown in the Okanagan. And tonight you get a treat after this presentation. We do have some Frontenac Gris that has been donated from Monte Creek Winery. So we thought it'd be awesome to let you guys try some of one of these hardy hybrid varietals. Likely you're going to see more of these in the future. And Jeff did get a tasting already.
Pleasantly awesome wines, I think, balanced and all that. But when was the last time somebody here in this room ordered a bottle of, can't even say it, Frontenac? There you go. So now the industry has the challenge to get out to the consumers like yourself and share that, and hopefully you like it. We may not have a choice if you like drinking wines. And, we watched that years ago starting to happen, and, forward thinking by Monte Creek. Of course, they're in the Kamloops region, so they obviously did some homework, and which is great. But again, when, I'm going to one of the great restaurants here in Whistler, and I be it having beef or a portobello grilled mushroom, I'm looking for that cab, or that we used to make one called Night, and I'm looking for that big red, or if I'm having seafood and lobster and butter, I want Chardonnay.
Basically, he's saying that we need to educate the old guys and introduce them to new varietals.
So but that's what's happening. So the industry, I phoned my friend at Nova Vines the other day, and very close with him, and he's in California, and what are you doing about this? And he goes, it's like the pants down. We got caught with our pants down. They're working on drought resistance vines for the Napa region. Never mind the frost resistant and these hardier varietals. So, but they're starting. Italy's on it. Parts of France, I'm told, are on it. And, France for years has had that frost thing sneak in on them. So that was a way of life. You see it in the movies. They're lighting, candles and little fires, and it looks romantic and it's fun. It's a lot of work. And then at what cost? Again, it's always about cost, because at the end of the day, you're paying more because we had to light candles this year. We're going to talk about one of these next slides coming up, how to mitigate some of this, that for the people that don't want to start planting these hybrids. There's new things happening out there. I think we can switch the.
So just one more thing on that,
sorry.
though. The timing. So one of the important things with climate change, or why it's being so challenging to navigate for the wine industry, is the cold snaps and the timing of them. So if your vineyard is completely dormant, and this is for all fruit trees, if it's dormant when you get a cold snap, chances are you'll still have some life in there, and you might have some bud damage, but less risk. But if there's a cold snap that's immediately following a warm period, or the winter really hasn't settled in as of last year. What happened was we had a super mild winter. It was random, but we had like wildflowers blossoming the week of Christmas. Well, then all of a sudden, right after New Year's Day or so, whatever it was when it first started, the cold snap, right around that, it dropped. So within a day, it dropped like 35 degrees. It was ridiculous. Well, those vines don't have a chance. They haven't shut down. There is still water flowing through them. So you're going to have damage to both the entire bud, and then also to the actual cane itself.
And trunk in some cases.
So, do you want to go ahead?
No, you keep going.
Okay, so this is just cross sections, right? It's a bit blurry, but there's another one. So when you slice the bud open, there's basically three parts. There's the primary bud, which is in the center. So that's going to give you the most fruit set from that shoot that's going to grow from there. Then on the left, you see the secondary one, and then the tertiary. The tertiary, most of the time, never produces any fruit. It's just there to keep the vine alive. So it's basically this backup survival shoot if the other two are dead. However, in the middle slide, you see that the primary is dead. And then on the right, you see all three are dead. In this slide, you see that the center one, the primary, is very green and vibrant and alive. The secondary actually died, and the tertiary is still alive. So Mother Nature doesn't necessarily always attack them in the order of logic. So you have to cut in and see. But so in this situation, the grower knows that, oh no, my primary is still there, it's great. But having that secondary bud damage still is concerning. So you need to have, need to protect the vine and hope for not late frost. Jeff was talking about briefly what one of the wineries in the Okanagan Valley tried last year, and he did it with a vineyard in Kamloops and experimented with some Cabernet Sauvignon plants, which are not the hardiest, we'll put it that way. They're not the hardiest plants, and Kamloops is a cold region. It got to -35 there last year, and what he did is he took shoots that were coming from the base. So this plant here actually has a graft union. And so it's basically comes up, and it's one rootstock, and they've grafted on the varietal of what they want to grow for the fruit. And I won't get into all of that, but the rootstock is basically ordered for the type of soil that it's going into. The plant and the clone is based on the fruit that the grower is looking for. So there will be this graft union when they're basically grafted in nurseries. It's very, very, very susceptible to cold weather. It's also anything that happens if you have any new shoots after a cold snap that go below the graft union, then you're getting whatever that rootstock was. You're not getting the plant you wanted from above. So However, there are several people in the valley that have self-rooted plants. So the graft unions traditionally were more popular in the Okanagan. More people are now moving to self-rooted, so there's no graft union. The plant above and below, it's one consistent plant. So if there's a new shoot growing, it's still what you want. So this grower in Kamloops, he took the new shoot, laid it flat across, and then buried it over the winter. So in the spring, he could bring it up. It survived minus 35 degrees cold, and it produced fruit for him this year. So it's a very labor-intensive project, but it was very successful to the extent that he's now doing it with other vineyards in the Okanagan Valley. So that's pretty innovative, very creative. He's the only person I know that's ever tried something like that, but the fact that it worked is really positive opportunity for more growers to do that. It is costly. That's one thing.
So, and I had asked him the cost, and he said a number, and I found it low, but you know, if it's $500 to $1,000 an acre to do that, again, guess what? The price of the wine continues to rise, but he can get fruit that year with that, and also you save the plant. And he'll do that again the following year. And it's just this insurance policy. So that might become a thing or a way. And again, he shared that. He's sharing it with other people. So that's the beauty of the industry, that we're all farmers, and what works is that camaraderie, that's for sure. So we're sure reaching out and seeing what works for some people and others, but that is a very labor-intensive program.
So a couple of years ago, you might recall our heat dome. So that was pretty scary, especially for people who hosted a lot of tastings in an outdoor setting. So we had staff that were working outside and guests visiting us outside, and we had a vineyard that was trying to grow fruit. Well, when you get a heat dome, it's the other spectrum, but the plant acts the same way. It wants to shut down. So instead of pushing water to the leaves and nutrients to the fruit to continue ripening, it wants to hold everything back and protect the root itself. So the vine starts shutting down when temperatures get to 35 degrees and above. So when we had that heat dome, we had over a week of temperatures that were 35 to 40 degrees. The vineyard does not like that. So it stresses out the plant, makes it more susceptible to disease. It makes it harder for it to survive the winter leading up to it, and it stops the ripening process during that period of time. So you have more of a challenge to try to get ripe fruit from it come the fall. We're also dealing with drier summers. So of course that we've talked about that, but increased need for irrigation. So typically vineyards in the Okanagan haven't needed that much water. And most wineries have used drip, but now with more heat and more stresses on trying to get water supply, there are some innovative watering techniques being used where they actually bury the water lines underground so that the minimum amount necessary is being put into the soil for the plants. And intense rainfall, again, we spoke about that, but soil erosion is a huge issue. Nutrient loss throughout the vineyards. So when you lose nutrients, you have to feed it back, and there's a cost to feeding that back. So whether you're an organic winery using biodynamic farming or traditional farming, there is a cost to making sure that the soil is optimal for production.
And just talking about, a big thing, if you're a farmer from Saskatchewan, we don't have enough rain, we have too much rain, all that. We've been dealing with some of this stuff for years, but just to, again, if we have too much rain, we start getting this powdery mildew disease. It really makes the grapes taste terrible. It's almost like a mold. It is a mold. And what happens is that to stay ahead of it, you have to spray it. And there's organic sprays and there's non-organic sprays. Regardless, I can my sprays one year can either cost me 100 grand, or they can cost me $150,000 because we had to spray that much more to get it under control. And just to really back up, talking about no fruit this year, well, we still have to farm it. We can still get powdery mildew on those leaves. And if you don't spray and farm it like normal, then that powdery mildew gets right into the plant and it's havoc for years to come. So we don't stop farming. So 95% fruit loss, we're still out there doing, everything we can to keep the vine as healthy as we can, the ones that are living anyway.
So this is going down to the Southern Hemisphere again, Argentina. So very labor intensive and material cost here, but they're netting the entire vineyard to protect the grapes from hail. So they're seeing reoccurring hail happening almost every year and multiple times throughout the year. So they've invested in netting to cover the entire vineyard to protect the vines.
We have netting as well to protect them from the starling birds and deer and bear and things like that. So that was some of the challenges that we've had. But netting isn't cheap. So give you an idea, for 10 acres of vineyard, the netting can cost somewhere around $18,000 just for the nets. And yeah, you get to use them over and over again for about, I'd say they last maybe 8 to 10 years. We have to start replacing some of it. Oh, and there's the machine that you have to buy to put it on. And so again, just cost. So when you're sitting there going, why does my damn Okanagan bottle of wine cost so much? That you can start to see now why some of these come into play when you have to do things like this.
So another way of dealing with the hail is in Burgundy, they prefer to launch silver nitrate rockets into the sky, which basically breaks up the hail so that by the time the hail falls, it's small enough pellets that it won't damage the fruit. So, and they've been doing that for years.
But who likes that? Is that a good way to do it? We're not versed well enough on it.
There's a little bit of environmental pushback on some of these things. Yeah. So isn't it romantic? Do you feel all the romance still? That's why we started with romance. Yeah. So navigating the changes. So strategies for wineries at this point. So it's like, okay, well, here we are. This is the reality. We know we're going to have challenges moving forward. What can we do? So first and foremost, they need to put the risks, do a risk assessment and put a financial risk forecasting and planning. So you're not going to get 100% crop every year. So what is realistic? Is it 60% over the next 5 years? Is it 70%? But forecast a realistic crop number so that you know. And I actually spoke to a real estate agent. We're sharing stories about industries, and she's like, oh, well, that's kind of like being a realtor. We know we're only getting paid about 7 out of every 10 years. There's always 3 dry years. So it's a reality. You're not going to have 100% harvest every year. So again, what Jeff was talking about, we still have to do the farming. So even if we have a spring and we know we've checked our buds and we know there's no fruit, you still have to do diligent farming just as if there was fruit there. So it's not as exciting. You're out there working the vineyard and there's no fruit, but you still have to do all the steps. You cannot skip because you need to have that plant as healthy as possible so that it will bounce back and produce fruit in the following years. There are some government plans out there, programs. So the provincial government has provided some financial assistance. The Environmental Farm Plan program is available to all wineries, and it will help with different erosion control, pest control, and switching to the most sustainable irrigation methods available. This gets really interesting now. So with everything that's going on in the world and all the problems with climate change in the vineyards, there's a crazy reality out there. And that is there's actually a wine glut. So people, and I appreciate you all being here because I'm assuming you enjoy wine, and so you're helping out with the industries. But there's not as much wine consumption as there used to be. So France used to consume 240 liters per person on average annually. They're now down to 40% annually. So massive drops in consumption of wine throughout the world. Canada, BC especially, we haven't dropped, but we were much smaller. So we only still today, per capita, we only consume about 15 liters a year per capita. So ours has been growing, but it's still a very, very small amount compared to European countries.
We know there's going to be some people arguing that number a bit.
We do our share.
Yeah.
So having said that about the wine glut, the BC government in August announced that wineries could purchase fruit, first time ever. They could maintain their estate license, so which means they can sell direct. They don't have to go through the government markup, and they could buy fruit outside of BC. So what does that cost? Well, there's a wine glut. So this year, wineries could go down in Napa Valley, for example, and spend $500 a ton for premium Napa Valley Cabernet fruit, which historically would run you up to $10,000 a ton. So the drop is dramatic. Comparatively, in the Okanagan, Cabernet Sauvignon is usually about $4,000 a ton. So if you can buy it for $500 instead of $4,000, even if you had a markup, you can still end up delivering product to the consumer and retain your margin.
But there's always a but. Who's going to, we're all BC people here tonight, I think, who by show of hands, and who's going to buy, I'm Jeff, we've sold Ex Nihilo now, but if I still had it, I'm Jeff from Ex Nihilo, and I have some Cabernet from California, and we're going to make it at our place. Are you going to buy it? Oh, that's good. Okay, thank you. And I would have spun this story because I have a story. My brother's down there, and I went down, and I'm the bigger brother, and I beat him up to get the best cab I could. And I hope you like it. And if you don't, I guess you don't buy it. But, we're seeing some of the industry push back. I would have had to do that probably because I had a bank to answer to. And when there's no fruit, no sales, so I would have had to really push that story. But there's a lot of wineries, and I understand, and I'll fly my BC hat every time, and that are really going to hang in there, and they might have some inventory that they're hoping that's going to carry them over. But even the big players, it's all about dollars and cents, obviously, when it comes to some larger corporations that own wineries, and I think I can say this, and I'm not talking out of school or whatever, but even Martin's Lane, premium Pinot Noirs that they're doing, and they're going down into the Washington and Oregon to look at some of the Pinots, and then they're going to come back and taste some of our Pinots here that they'll still have in their libraries, and try some of this Oregon fruit that we're getting now. So making it more of it's about our stylistically how we're approaching the wines and things like that. But there is this, in the smaller wineries, and we were one of them, again, our vineyard's not producing. So right off, there's no income coming in. And now I got to go down south and buy fruit. And Decoa used a low number, but I think Napa was averaging out this year $1,500 to $2,000. Still a good price down there. But, I got to buy, 200 tons. So do the math. That's where, got to talk to your banker and, can I have some money, please? Or, go into your, hopefully there's some reserve there. But there's, it's a tough nut to crunch. And we're going into a field, of a lot of people don't even know how to, go down south and find this fruit. And, we were lucky because I have family down there, and we've dove into the industry years ago. But some of these newer, I was talking to a fella that came into the wine industry about 6 years ago. Yeah, of course, he knows where, the southern video. Where do I start? What do I do? And where do I go and who do I see? So there's all those challenges. So talk about stress, personal stress. And so we're seeing a lot of that going on right now. So where are we here? What else can we talk about?
So the government has given, it's a single year that the wineries are allowed to buy fruit from out of province, but then they do have 2 years to sell it through. So one option for wineries that they may, if they have success doing this, is to continue operating and flip their license from an estate license to a commercial license. So that is an opportunity that some may do. I'm suspecting a few are in the process of doing that. Some were very quick to get on to, there's already wines in the market that are under traditional BC labels that are being made with fruit from out of the province. So it's pretty exciting. The industry is definitely going to be looking different. And one thing that all the wineries, if you do bring any fruit in from outside of province, you do have to clearly label that on your bottle, and they're not allowing the wineries to blend it with Okanagan fruit. So it has to be specific from the region that you're buying it from and disclose that. So other options that we talk about, the resilient varietals. So hybrids, it's mass. There is thousands of different grape varietals available. So there is a lot of opportunity there, and working with nurseries and experiments, and also grafting new plants on even hardier rootstock to try to create wines that are going to be successful for the vineyard grower, but also a win for the winemakers. So relocate vineyards to more optimal microclimate sites for specific varietal and rootstock clones. Try burrowing your new shoots underground to protect them over the winter. And then this is an interesting one, the cold snaps. There is a non-toxic antifreeze that they're actually experimenting with to put on the vines to protect them from cold snaps as well. So there's a lot of different research going on, and some of it is going to be successful, some of it's not, but it's definitely, things are changing in the world of the wine industry. And as far as the financial forecast planning, it's really important for wineries to keep the revenues up. And as some people are being deterred and nervous about visiting the Okanagan and planning their trip in July and August because they're worried about the smoke from fires, that they're marketing it as 4 seasons. So fall, winter, spring, and summer, and having specific events and trade shows and that kind of thing to bring the tourists out for all throughout the year. So yes, and that's just a reminder to come visit the BC wine region.
Still need your support.
There's 9 regions within the BC wine province of BC, all exciting to visit, all offered something different, from events to restaurants and overnight stays. All right, now we get to turn it to you guys to ask us questions. Oh, we should shut these
I
off.
think one of these got to go off here. No. Okay.
Ooh, oh, yay. Okay. Adam, can I get you to run a mic? Wonderful. Thank you, you both. Does anybody want to start us off with any questions?
Please ask. I could ask you a question. Do you have crop insurance? Was there crop insurance, and is there still crop insurance?
So there is a provincial, the question was, is there crop insurance available, and did we have it? So there is a provincial crop insurance program available, and all wineries can apply for it annually. It has to be applied for and completed by October 30th every year. So you're basically buying the crop insurance leading into the winter, and it's based on how many live plants they'll come to your vineyard, do an assessment. So it's available, and it's available for the fruit and the plants themselves.
and it's a percentage scale. So it's not 100% coverage, but there's a percentage scale and you have options of how you can purchase. So yes, good question. However, even with that, it will give you a return on what your normal harvest is. It doesn't make up for the return that a winery would receive if they were to make the fruit into wine and sell it as bottled wine. So there are some vineyards are just farmers. So for a straight farmer, there's a higher percentage of value. For wineries, they aren't really profitable until they can actually make wine and sell it. Yes.
So, this is about the, sorry, thanks. The difference between a BC winery and a BC winery with a commercial license, is that the former have to use all BC grapes and have a tax exemption as a consequence of that, or some kind of tax benefit as a consequence of that?
Yeah, I'll let Decoa, that's her, I'm above my pay scale, so she's a little more up to date on that. And it's new too, it's kind of new,
So, well, there's always been this state winery license and a commercial. So estate wineries are granted an exemption and they can sell direct to consumer without going through the government liquor store. So everything, whether you buy wine at a restaurant or a liquor store, unless it's a BC estate wine, it's gone through the government liquor store. So they can sell direct to a restaurant, they can sell direct to the consumer, they can sell direct to the liquor store. And the only taxes we're paying are the PST and the GST, right? Like we submit them, but they're actually charged after. So whereas the other model, a commercial model, you have to list your wholesale price to the liquor board, and then there's about an 85% markup they put on it. It's huge. So it changes your margin and your price point quite dramatically.
that can answer the question. More questions?
Yeah. Is there a worry with, I mean, obviously, keeping people, keeping people alive through this problem is very, very important. But is there a worry that some wise guys will get in and try to perpetuate just basically bottling California grapes?
It's still very regulated. When the grapes come across the border, everything is tracked in our industry. So they're going to, I think, to try to answer your question, if Decoa and I were still in the business again, we would have been bringing California. There is Oregon, there's Washington, but we probably would have went right south because, again, of our story. So we would bring those grapes up. We can't blend them. So excise is watching us very closely on our tonnage and our liters, correct? Yeah. And
sorry, was your question more is the risk that the identity of the BC wine industry is going to be lost by allowing the fruit to come in from outside?
No, not so much that is would you see I don't know what you call the wise guys, carpetbaggers, people getting into the industry, buying local BC wineries cheaply right now, and then with the idea of always bringing in out of province.
Well, that's a great question. You could always do that. Again, you're still paying that high rate of tax.
Yeah, this
come in with the commercial license.
The exemption, remember, is just for 1 year. So then it's going to flip to.
I think you're in the industry, aren't you, sir? That's right. Okay. So, so it's only 1 year right now, and it could change. But again, to the carpetbaggers, if you want to call them that, it would be very costly for them to start a winery and go through that process of starting that winery. You have land to buy. Now you can just go and do a commercial license, and that could be a building, and you still have to make the wine. So
okay, but we're married, so we always debate, just so you know. So but his scenario was he's buying a winery right now
Right.
at a good price, and then and bringing in the fruit. And so, yeah, it is possible, and there is that risk there. The way I look at it, though, is the flip side is if we are going to continue to struggle to produce fruit, the other reality or option could be that there is no wine industry at all and there are no wineries to visit. So if we can keep the tourism industry alive and still offer an experience, and maybe half of the portfolio is local and half is from wines from outside of BC, we're still offering something that's enhancing that people enjoy wine because it's you slow down and you enjoy it. It enriches your life. So it brings out, with wine comes food, with wine comes art, with wine comes entertainment. So I think it's a holistic approach, and I think that the industry has to be open-minded and see. For example, if I can just read something, because I'm going to read something just because I don't want it wrong. So the one winery that I was speaking of that, that is producing and it's in the market now is Quail's Gate. And they have a series of wines that they've now labeled Field and Flight. So it still has the Quail's Gate logo on it, but it's Field and Flight. And wines are a daring adventure into uncharted territory. We've explored some of the best grape growing regions throughout the Cascadia corridor to craft wines that deliver on flavor and discovery. So they're not hiding it. They're saying we're just going to follow the Cascadia range down. We're going to continue to look for fruit that our winemakers are excited to make, and we invite you to share our passion.
And over the 24 years, Decoa and I have seen a lot of people come and go over the years, and if you're not passionate, and if you think this is just about making money, you're not lasting in this game. That's my opinion. And the carpetbaggers, using that term, sure, there probably has been some in the past, and there could be some in the future, but it's a very not only labor intensive, financial. You want to make $1 million in the wine business, start with 10. And that's kind of, so for those people that really look at it at that kind of in that direction, it won't last long. And I think it's difficult. So I hope that kind of answers the question. I think it's a great question. I think we're early in the game to see what's going to happen. But, Quail's Gate, I think, was brilliant. When Decoa found that on their website, it's public, the Cascadia range. Like, brilliant marketing, if you ask me, because what they're saying is that we went down the West Coast and we found some great terroir and we found some amazing fruit, and our team's excited to, and again, try it, and hopefully you like it. And if you do, you're gonna probably have to buy it for a while until we get our back to the Okanagan fruit. So, yes.
One of my favorite varietals is Cabernet Franc, and I'm just wondering, what do you think will happen with that varietal? Because I think we do a better job in the Okanagan than anywhere else.
I think we might have somebody who can answer that. Yeah. I think he grows some. If I may, in our vineyard. Well, we think that might go over.
Getting old, Max. Thanks. That's a great question. At our vineyard in Lillooet, Clifton Gorge Vineyards, we started initially back in 2008 with a trial of 36 different varieties. Of that, 5 or 6 of them were what we call modern vines for future wines, aka hybrids, which has proven to be very interesting. And the rest of it were Vitis vinifera. Okay. We've been slowly and now with much more haste tearing out vinifera and replacing with modern varieties. The only vinifera that we have left, okay, out of all kinds of different things you've never heard of, is Pinot Noir, which has produced no fruit the last 2 years running, but the plants are alive. Another one you may have heard of, Pinot Auxerrois, exactly the same thing, no fruit, but the plants are alive, and Cabernet Franc. Okay. And we lost some of the Cabernet Franc, but we decided to replant it at a lesser scale. We had a big commitment to Cabernet Franc, but those are the only 3 vinifera that we're staying with. Everything else is modern vines, and we are planting more and more and more of them because, I mean, I had a great crop this year, you know. And if I may, 2 things. I didn't spray fungicides once this year. Okay, so not only are there, if I can just do this really quickly, Vitis vinifera, the ones we all know, that's the Chardonnays, the Pinot Gris, blah, 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 blah. There are other wild varieties, Vitis amurensis, Vitis riparia, Vitis rupestris. This is where the modern varieties have been bred from for disease resistance. The only reason that these amurensis and so on even exist in the wild is because they're resistant to disease. Otherwise, they'd be gone, right? What nobody saw coming in the case of rupestris and riparia, and especially amurensis in Asia, is that they're also more winter hardy. And these crosses or interspecific crosses that have been created are fully disease resistant, and winter hardy is something that nobody saw coming. So we're pretty excited about what's going on. And one of the places kind of exciting, and I'm almost finished.
No,
I can go on and on and
Yeah.
on, as some people in this room know.
Well,
Some very clever organizations like Quail's Gate. You get around there next year, you're going to see a very, very large tract of modern vines being propagated.
well, and that's again, so first of all, thank you for sharing. It's wonderful. And I love hearing that. Decoa and I, when we were first asked to do this, and we were extremely busy in some other areas right now, but as we sat at our kitchen table and talked a lot about this, and Decoa taking a little deeper dive into some of these wines, exactly what you're talking about. And again, I've got a little Arctic blonde here, and I came from, the old school of wine. And so it's exciting to hear. And I think the next generations of our consumers, and we collect kids, I have 6, and they'll be all over this kind of stuff, and which I think is exciting. So yeah, there's some doom and gloom. And you came in at 8 years ago, forward thinking, which is great. And for us, that got into the game 24, 25 years ago. Decoa was in the game a little longer. My brother, it's Cabernet Sauvignon, and up here in the Okanagan, of course, Pinot Noirs and things. So I think the consumer, and it's yourself who's trailblazing that, to get out there and tell rooms like this is what we're doing, and it's exciting. And this wine is great. This first time I tried it was 2 hours ago when it first showed up, and I'm going, lovely balanced wine, and I'll drink it all day long. So I'm excited to see where it's going to go. It's new to all of us. So thank you for doing what you're doing, and you're going to be the trailblazer. And I love the area, by the way. I had family in Lillooet since about the early 60s, and I can't wait to see how that. If I was 10 years younger, I'd maybe come on out and join you down the street. But it's an exciting, in a lot of ways, it's an exciting time as well. So. Yes.
To your question about whether we would drink wines from BC Winery that we know the grapes have come, or juice has come up from elsewhere, for sure. Look at what happened to the peaches this year. I'm a proud former tree fruit grower. And so I spent 20 years trying to get grocers to have our BC fruits.
Right.
So here I am back in Oliver. There's no peaches. And all of our local fruit stands, from Carameus all through Oliver, Soyuz, they would proudly advertise that they had the California peaches in, and we all rushed for them. Then they got the Ontario peaches in. It's when things happen, you want your peaches, just like we want our
absolutely. And as much as we love our terroir in BC here, and we want to show our best, Mother Nature, I always says, has the last bat, and she's throwing a curveball at us. And so again, when I said earlier, when we first started our talk tonight, it was climate change, it's somewhere else. And now we're really truly seeing the effects. So I think it's like yourself that's trailblazing. The Quails Gates, we're ripping it out anyway. Let's start doing the right thing and getting back on track here so we can keep people employed and the industry going. So more questions. And thank you for asking the questions, because that's important. Well, there's one back here first.
What would your estimate be on the number of estate wineries that will be bringing fruit over the border?
Really a good question. Decoa just said a third, and that's just some very early numbers that us getting on the phones and talking to our colleagues. Right now it's a third. If this happens again next year, it could be a lot more. It may be more than that. So great question. I'm sure there'll be some data around that as after this season here. So.
Thank you. I understand that it's very difficult to answer a question that you don't know why the question's even being asked in the first place. You mentioned being caught with your pants down frequently. Yeah. And I know that a lot of you are growers in the room, and I'm just wondering if I'm not a wine grower, so this is just out of curiosity. Collectively, you now have a source that you pull from in terms of climate change. Do you have someone watching what's happening in other regions? You say you saw it happening from afar and then it came to you. Are there now people employed to monitor those situations? And are you safeguarding that for future?
Yeah, it's a good question. And again, and I'm just going to be very transparent. Decoa and I had sold our winery a year and a half ago. And so yeah, Summerland Research Station is really out there and trying to collect as much data, but the whole industry, like to your question, there's a lot of camaraderie, not just in BC, but throughout the world. Australia is coming up with different things that they're putting in the tanks where it attracts the smoke taint and binds it to this jelly that they put in, as an example. I'm just speaking in layman terms. And so there's a lot of things happening out there. I think, again, it's the way the world is. We react after something happens. And I think that now, it's hit us face on, and it's time that we have to start doing all this. But yes, there's a lot of camaraderie and in the industry. So
Association. Yeah. Oh, okay. There are multiple associations though as well. So there's the Wine Growers of BC, there's a Grape Growers Association. So there are ones that collectively have the data. There is also faculty of wine research at UBC, both working out of the Vancouver campus and the Kelowna campus, and they're trying to get more involved with the local industry so that they can work on projects that will assist directly what is needed most. So yes. And that takes time.
I think I've got a comment here, and then I've got a question over here. You're exactly right. I actually not even a comment, just an observation. UBC pulled out of the Okanagan. I think it was a year and a half ago. Not sure.
Well, they're trying to go back, but anyway, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Washington State University, Dr. Marcus Keller, they just announced a long-term funding in the many millions of dollars for cold wine research. Okay. I just got back from Austria, Slovenia, and Croatia, meeting with growers who grow what are called peewee varieties. These are hybrids, modern vines. Peewee is Pilzwiderstandsfähige Rebsorten, grapevines for fungus disease. This has been going, there's huge organizations, there's entire regions growing nothing but these peewee vines. They've gotten rid of vinifera entirely. I believe that the industry in British Columbia is 30, 40, 50 years behind what's going on in a lot of parts of the world. This is a grand opportunity. What's happened the last few years. I really, really, really hope that the industry somehow gets it together and doesn't emerge from the other side of this as just the same old industry that they've been before. There's so much we have to learn here.
It's good to hear. It's good to hear. And back to my friend at Nova Vines in California, like you said, that Italy, there's some huge nurseries over there and departments that are working on so much. But that's great to hear. And again, it's not. We're going to have to, I think. And so, go ahead.
So, if you like an Oregon Pinot Noir, I think Oregon Pinot probably faces some pretty high duties coming up here. But under this cross-border collaboration of buying grapes south of the border, making the wine here, it sounds like a bit of a backdoor, possibly to a lower priced Oregon Pinot in BC. Is that accurate?
Well, we haven't ourselves went through that process. I'm going to guess, and maybe you. I know you're sticking to your guns, and you haven't went south for fruit, have you? No. So I honestly think the pricing, even though it, convert the dollars, do the drive, the time, again, and lost revenue. I think if we're going to see lower price Pinots, and I think going back to the Quails Gates who's doing this, and we know the family quite well, the pricing was reasonable, very reasonable. I don't think it was out of line. And again, Decoa's a numbers person, and if we were in the game, we would have been really crunching. And again, we would have had to do it. But again, it all boils down to what are you paying for that fruit, and the cost to bringing it up. So,
sorry, just a minute. Having said that, the fruit is only one part of the input costs. Yeah. So the overhead of the winery is still going to be consistent. Managing the vineyards is still there, and the bottling and the rest of the production. So to the degree that it helps, also, if somebody's, it depends, I guess, what happens, if it's going to be really just this year or what the long-term plan is, because from a marketing point of view, you're not going to change your price points dramatically, right? Because, if you are selling a premium $40 Pinot Noir, just because it ends up that you could sell it, less, are you going to sell it for $25 for 1 year and then have to go back to 40 to make any money? So it's part of a bigger picture on what you actually will end up seeing.
I actually work for a Washington winery, and we produce luxury wines, and our wines are over $100 in the BC liquor stores. So, definitely BC wines are already a lot more affordable. However, I will say our industry in Washington, a lot of growers there have quite a lot of fruit that they need to sell at very good price points. And so likely you will find some great Washington cab from BC wineries. And, I think our industry is excited to help. And it's like an opportunity for everybody. I think another little point of perspective is that most states in the US have wineries, even though a lot of them don't actually produce a lot of grapes. And it's more of a experience for people in those areas. It's a tourism opportunity. Like in Texas, there are wineries there that produce hundreds of thousands of cases, and none of them even leave the state, right? Yeah. And same in Western Washington, our winery being one of them, we sell most of our wine in Western Washington. So I think this is it's a common thing in other wine areas to bring in fruit from other parts of the world and make fruit and provide great experiences for people in your backyard. So,
well, thank you for sharing that. And it's great. And again, it's where we're at and what we've had to do. And I guess to sum it up kind of is to, we're farmers first and foremost. And when Decoa and I got into the business 24 years ago, we didn't have a lot of money. we weren't, come from oil or tech or whatever. A lot of these, and I say it with kindness in California, my brother's neighbors, these are people that have scads and scads of money. And, but, we were watching every dime and penny. And, to go to Austria or Switzerland or Italy to do some research, we just barely made it. So when you can trailblaze, like our friends in Lillooet here, which is great. We love it. And he's sharing some of his knowledge. And that's just going to help us all in the long run. And Jeff has to get off his high horse on Cabernet Sauvignon or, Okanagan Pinot that we love so much. And we're going to have to look at, a hybrid or a modern day grape. And I like the term. Times are changing. And like I said, this could be the opportunity that we have to take and run with it. So, yeah. Any other questions? Well, I think there's a taste of this wonderful wine from Monte Creek, and we're going to hang out for a little bit here. And it was wonderful in the lobby. We're going to be out front, and thank you very much for coming out and listening. Thank you, Andy and Adam and Belinda, for having us out. And we just wanted to help share what's going on out there at this level. So I hope it makes you think and go away tonight to understand where the industry, number one, is at right now with climate. 2, costs of wine, because that's a whole different conversation. And hopefully we can get our tourism back and get going. And this time too shall pass, but with some new grapes. So again, thank you for sharing, and thank you for coming out. So thank you, Mandy. Russell back there, thank you.